He's perhaps one of the first names I came across when I started working in the industry like 7 years ago. And today is my go to friendly face at any concert. I doubt very much that there is any artist in India who hasn't heard of his name. It'll be hard to miss, obviously, because especially with the kind of profile he has, he's a regular contributor to almost all the big publications and is also assistant editor at Rolling Stone India. You would have seen his name appear in almost every publication that has spoken about music, be it Vogue, Variety, The Hindu, First Post. Well, you get the drift. And if you haven't caught on yet, you really have some serious homework to do. So a long overdue welcome to Anurag Tagat to Let's Talk Music. Thank you so much for taking time out to be here, Anurag. It really means a lot to me.
Thank you, Sandhya. It's really nice to be here. It's really good to be talking to you. And yeah, I really appreciate that, that you asked me to be part of this.
More than happy to have you here. So I think first off, this is a debate that I've had earlier as well. How do I pronounce your surname?
yeah, so it's like most times I've let it slide now, like given the number of years that's been happening. But it's the correct pronunciation is Tagat. It's
okay.
Slightly anglicized for whatever reason. I don't really think about it anymore. But most of the time, I just tell people it's a proper noun. It's okay. It's okay to mess it up.
That's very kind of you. But I'll keep that in mind and hopefully I'll not forget it. Great. Okay, so I'm going to dive right in. And I think journalism in music is a very interesting topic in general. And I think you've had like a workshop at Rainbow Bridge as well, where you've spoken about your career and what it means to actually be a music journalist, in India, and what are like, the things you need to do to like actually groom yourself to be an efficient one. So our episode today is also going to focus on a lot of those aspects, but also about you personally as a journalist and the kind of journey you've been on. And I think that's probably where I'd like to begin, right? Like I said, there are very few people in the industry who do not know your name. And you're probably the first music journalist they can think of. So tell us about your journey and how and why music journalism, and was it intentional?
It was definitely very much intentional in the way that that I knew soon enough that it was what I would want to do, or at least generally like do arts and culture journalism rather than do like the really hard stuff. It's to to go and report on stuff and things like that, because I did an internship at the Hindu right here in Bangalore in like June to July of 2011. And it was something I did just before I went to do my MA in journalism in London at Goldsmiths College. So one of the things that happened at that point, I think, was that I got an understanding of all the different kinds of journalism, which was really, I'm really grateful for that at the Hindu. That within 1 month they crammed all that into like just like a trainee's sort of space. And I would go to like protests and strikes and cover those things, or I would, go to like the planetarium and like, speak to them about what's going on with light pollution. Or I would go to one of the many localities that were rising, quote unquote, at the time in Bangalore 10 years ago, and like write about what's going on in those localities, I guess, and how they're changing. So all those things really gave me quite a good understanding. But then at the end, one of the last things I did was I covered an Agam show at Hard Rock Cafe. I'll never forget it, because it was one of the first bylines that I got in a newspaper.
Oh, wow. And what year was this, by the way?
Oh, this was 2011. Yeah. So it was,
okay,
it was,
like 12 years
they weren't, I think they were just about to release the album, The Inner Self Awakens. And that's when they played. And of course, they also did like some A.R. Rahman stuff and all that. That was what they were doing back then. Harish was still playing violin on stage and stuff.
This is like,
way back.
Nice.
So, and it was really nice to, cover that show. Because before that, I was reviewing shows and albums in the indie scene, like just in for like a blog called Korva in Mumbai. So
Okay.
like I had a little bit of understanding of like maybe how to maybe review a gig. Not really, but I
Mm.
guess I can say that they were published and therefore I wrote it. Uh,
Okay.
but yeah, like I guess because of that, like I felt a little more confident to go to these shows and want to write about them.
Right.
And because I was already attending shows for quite a few years by then. Like I think I started attending gigs like
Mm.
2005, maybe something like that. So it'd been like a good
Mm.
5, 6 years of fully being a part of, going to shows, going to festivals, really enjoying what was going on there. Although there weren't that many festivals, as you know, back then. It was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
starting up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
like I would go to Independence Rock and things like that.
Yeah.
I'd seen I'd
Yeah.
seen Rainbow Bridge right there at IROC once.
Yeah. When Rainbow Bridge was a band, right? Yeah. And
Exactly.
yeah.
So I mean, so to have been part of that sort of like just as both my brother and I, we used to go to all these shows, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it was it really told us like like gave us a real understanding of obviously the kind of musicianship that was around, and the kind of stories that were being told through these
Mm.
artists, and
Mm.
then at the same time also that like what they were doing, or like what they're like that they were in it for quite a long
Yeah.
haul.
For the
Like
long
none of
haul.
them
Yeah.
seem to be like yeah, of course some of them seem to be like, yeah, we'll do it and then whatever, we'll give
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
But I think that now that I think of it, like some of that was definitely like reflected on me, like to say that like that
Mm.
maybe I should be writing about music. And I'd also seen writers like Amit Gurbaxani, Arjunas, Ravi, and
Yeah.
like Lalita Swasni, all these folks like who were writing for different
Yeah.
magazines at the time. And I'd
Yeah.
seen their work, and I knew that yeah, there are people writing about this, there are people doing stuff about this.
Yeah.
So I automatically also felt like, as a reflection of like what these this whole community, this ecosystem does, like
Yeah.
that I would also like to be part of it. Like I remember reading like Banuj Kapal's review of Avial live at like Bandra Amphitheater in Bombay, and
Yeah.
he had written that for a newspaper, and I was just like, man, like it really made me happy to see it, and also just be like like if this is appearing in the papers, if he can talk about like what Avial sounds like and introduce people to Avial in
Mm.
papers, then it sounds like, yeah, it sounds like there's avenues for it basically,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that there's definitely at least newspapers, publications are willing to commission it. So I definitely felt like I should give it a go.
And that's great. I mean, I always love these stories because I think, especially something, music is so personal, right? Like when you talk about it, and for you to be able to introduce someone to an artist that you have enjoyed and you have loved watching perform live, and who you relate to, as in, and to do it like like an actual job, as in the sense a job that you love. It's not just a job then, right? It's something that you actually believe in.
Uh-huh.
um it's I think, I just want to understand that, like, so in the same line of thought, like, more often than not, it's the journalist that, follows an artist or discovers an artist and introduces them to the world when they're writing about them in a publication. But very rarely does a journalist actually get appreciation for it, right? Like, it's always the publication that does. um i- like, do you think, like, what are your thoughts about this? Because the reason this, I also wanted to ask this question is because I've seen something on similar lines being spoken about by someone else in the recent past. And I kind of do agree because, it's your eye, it's your taste in music, or your, particular, observation of a concert that is actually bringing somebody to the forefront, right? So how do you, what do you think about that? Like, it's not really a question, but I just want to hear your thoughts.
Uh, I honestly feel like I always get a lot of appreciation for my writing, so maybe
Okay,
I'm
that's great.
pretty lucky that way.
Yeah.
I'm like I've had like some really heartwarming messages from musicians or just people over time. Like I
Mm.
was literally at a gig the other day. in Guild in Bangalore. Literally first time I've gone there, so I've never like, I don't know who's coming there or anything like that. And yeah, just
Lovely. Huh.
some guy standing next to me just like comes up to me and he says, "You're Anurag, right?" I'm like, "How the hell do you know this? Like how
So cute.
like
Huh.
like who is looking up like like me and things like that." So like those kind of things give
You're
me
famous.
yeah, I mean, like it gives me a very like
A
clear
nice feeling.
indication,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that people know of me and people, I guess, appreciate me,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people definitely appreciate the work that I do. I think for me, partly it comes from the fact that I have been associated with Rolling Stone India for the last 10 years, like
Mm.
since 2012 when I joined. So I think a lot of people obviously, chase the fact that they want to be published in Rolling Stone India or they want to be
Mm.
written in Rolling Stone India. But at
Mm.
the same time, I think, at least what I've seen over time is that a lot of people also say that, like you really understood the music or you understood what we were trying to say with the music. They
Mm.
say that, you asked us some questions that we weren't expecting, difficulties,
Mm.
whatever it is, things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
All of that, yeah, like tells me that I feel quite appreciated. There are definitely, of course, tons of times where um, the journalist isn't sort of like
Yeah. Highlighted. Yeah.
appreciated. I
Yeah.
definitely see instances of this with everybody, including
Mm.
me. That's it's definitely true. But
Mm.
I feel like it comes from the fact that like I remember even early on at Rolling Stone, like I remember I used to write some stories, and this was
Mm.
something that I also saw at the Hindu, where like you
Mm.
would write a story, but they would be like, you can't take a byline for that, like it's this used to be the culture before, where like my editor
Mm.
would tell me that you're not, you don't have to take a byline for this. This can just go under the publication name. And
Oh.
so I think there is, at least originally, there was a lot of like sort of like pride attached, not pride, but just a
Yeah.
lot of
But
like
it's your work,
system.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there was like sort of like a system in place which sort of wanted the publication up first. And maybe that's ingrained in people's minds. I don't know, like even in the readers and even in the artists, like they feel like it is more about the publication than the writer. But yeah, I feel at the end of the day, like there is a human being who is writing this stuff, not a
Yeah.
faceless organization. So
Yeah.
it
Hopefully not
definitely.
chat GPT in 50 years.
Well, you'd be surprised,
Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
But
let's not jinx it.
yeah, yeah,
Anyway.
totally.
But I hear you, and I think, and that's great. And I genuinely think the kind of work that music journalism does for the career of an artist, and more so for discovery of new music, because for a lot of people, a publication or a page that you follow on Instagram or on social media is something that is your avenue to discover like new artists and new genres and new, or like your reference point for a new concert that's happening in town or something like that, right? So I think everyone deserves due credit where they're adding to the system or helping that infrastructure like grow stronger. So I mean, safe to say you've been around before you know Instagram became Instagram, and obviously you've also seen the era of like actual print publication being as big as it was, right? It isn't as much today, I would, as in, at least from what I understand. But
Yes.
in your idea, how has music journalism evolved, especially in India, during the time that you have like been working as a music journalist?
Yeah, I think just like everything else in the Indian music industry and the
Hmm.
Indian music ecosystem, like it's
Hmm.
it's definitely got a lot more sort of like commercialized because that it has been the need,
Yeah.
where yeah, like a lot of brands are coming in, a lot of like like people want to partner, they'll use word like collab and partner and things like that instead
Hmm.
of because they know that to get an article, quote unquote, to get an article, based on what they are doing by themselves, like I think that's quite optional in the world of journalism. Like if you have marketing and if you have like paid ads, all those kind of things going around, even now if you say you have like influencer activities and all those things, then your
Yeah.
brand doesn't really need a push from journalism. It doesn't really need somebody writing about how great you are, because I think um, yeah, it's already all there to see, like the work
Mm.
ideally I feel speaks for itself. But at the same time, yeah, a lot of brands still come to publications to say that, "Hey, why don't you write about how great we are?"
Mm.
And I'd be like, but why do you need it? So the need for that authenticity and that validation, I think,
Mm.
is definitely what has increased over time.
Mm.
um, I think before there were a lot of players who were like, yeah, like fiercely independent, like fiercely like in the space of doing things their own way. And then I think, like, then they would say that, if you feel this is good enough, if you feel this warrants, like sort of any coverage, then let us know. um
Yeah.
so but these days, like it's about like Instagram verification and things like that. So they'll be
Mm.
like, if I get an article from you, I'll probably get verified on Instagram, stuff
Oh,
like that.
wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of talk about those kind of things, at least from artists.
Mm.
Whereas, so yeah, I think like the idea of an article, the idea of coverage has
Mm.
changed hugely over the last
Mm.
like 10 years that I've been part of this.
And what it
Um,
implies, right? Like the consequences of having that article also.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot
Mm.
of artists I know have like bugged me to the point of like, just like total irritation
Oh
for
God.
coverage. But
Oh
the
God. Yeah.
moment that the coverage comes through, they have
Mm.
literally never written back to me ever again about anything that they've been doing. Some artists, a few years down the line, don't even do anything anymore. So
Mm.
yeah, it really makes you think that like in terms of like I guess the value of journalism and the value
Yeah.
of music journalism, as we've been going along, it's definitely meant a lot of different things to different people
Mm.
in music ecosystem. Basically, I think a lot of people. I've definitely seen a lot of artists who wouldn't care at all about like doing
Mm.
an interview, and they don't need it. And I think
Mm.
they're probably right, that they don't need it.
Mm.
But at the same time, yeah, like I think our role is to like constantly like shake things up, and to sort of be to say that we are needed because we do all these things. It's not that we only
Yeah.
do this thing,
Yeah.
so and so. So yeah, like our role is to do many things. And I think music journalism is still thankfully doing that. It still has people who are doing that in India.
Yeah.
So I would say there's fewer. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say there's fewer people. I would say that there's people coming in, there's people going out. All those things happen. There's people coming back. All those things also happen.
Yeah.
So it's still growing, but I would say it's growing in like a very push and pull kind of way, where there's always some kind of setback sometimes, or other
Mm.
times there's quite a lot of like, there's a big leap taken forward. Like what happens with Rolling Stone India right now, for example, is that
Yeah.
um, it's very much in a space where they're thinking a lot more about IPs and things like that, thinking about how
Huh.
to make it more about what utilizing the brand power of something as long-standing as Rolling Stone. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the space that they're in now. But at the same time, we also push forward with a lot of other things,
Mm.
journalism wise, and like writing wise.
Yeah. And I mean, and you know what you mentioned something about earlier, like there might be some people who'll approach you to have themselves spoken about or have someone that they're representing spoken about. So, and especially as a publication as big as Rolling Stone and as a journalist, um, I mean, in the current context where I feel that obviously like bigger, larger entities like labels and all of that, they pump in a lot more resources to get their artists discovered and highlighted a lot more, right? Have you ever had that, have faced that conflict where you've had to say no to a bigger name for, I mean, in quotes, right? Like bigger name for a, again, in quotes, like a smaller artist or an independent artist. And has that had like translated into any negative consequence, or like does it, because obviously when you're working as a journalist in a publication as big as Rolling Stone, you're also dealing with those kind of people, right? Like the brands that sponsor you, or like your investors, and those kind of questions that arise in like regular journalism as well. I'm sure it happens for like music journalism specifically because it's about fame and being a celebrity. So how do you deal with that?
I think it's it's there's always like some trade-offs that happen in that
Mm,
whole process,
mm,
but at the same time, and I think it also depends on like just the number of writers who are covering like music in India, right? So
yeah.
like they know that they can't go to anybody else after a point. So
Mm,
like those things also like have to be factored in for these labels, brands, sponsors, all these things, right? So but at the same time, yeah, I feel that it's never been that way. That like I've had to say no to a bigger artist, and then so that I can cover a smaller artist. Like
mm,
I think for me, like I always end up like taking the time out to do justice to both, as long as like
mm,
I have the time and bandwidth to do
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And also, I can only do justice to it if they are accessible. So, a lot of times what
True.
happens is that the bigger artist is actually not accessible. Like it's a very, constructed sort of like an setting for which
Yeah.
like an interview happens. There's a lot of clauses, there's a lot of limitations. They'll say that they'll only talk about this, for example, or they only want to
Huh.
limit the questions to this. If we send an email interview, they'll obviously have the liberty to just skip like a lot of questions about other things, and they'll say they only want to talk about this. So
Huh. Okay.
all those
That's
all those
interesting.
things, yeah,
I'm going to catch on to that for later. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, all those things mean that there's like there's a whole lot of like construction, sort of like
Mm,
like an image that sort of like goes image building thing that goes into the bigger artist. So
mm,
therefore, there are also like it's actually sometimes restrictive to like
mm,
try to write something worthwhile about bigger
mm.
artists. So yeah, like I think we make that clear to a lot of people who like speak to us and give us these kind of like stipulations and stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Like a lot of times they'll say that he only wants to talk, this rapper only wants to talk about this, and I'll be like, well, that's too bad, like I won't ask him about everything.
Yeah.
So
Great.
let him come back when he wants to talk to us, basically.
Nice. I am going to come back to that because I want to talk about that in a larger context. But I mean, as is the case, I think with journalism in general, right? Like there is a certain code of ethics, which is like you have like both your written and unwritten. Um, what is it that you have to keep in mind? And this is, I think, is not just specifically about you, but also as a professional standard, right? Are there any, is there any specific code of ethics that you need to follow, or is it like, is it publication driven, or is it like an industry specific thing? uh, how is it that you go about managing that?
There are definitely journalistic ethics that are very
Yeah.
much standard like across the field,
Yeah.
so we always follow that. And I try as much to tell other people who are also like in the same field as me. Maybe they might be new, maybe they might be not so like, yeah, like not everybody has the same sort of like background. So like
Mm,
sometimes we try to educate them about that as well. So
mm,
yeah, like I mean the standard like sort of like things that are in that space pretty much say that yeah, like one for example is that you never actually share a draft of your article with anybody other than your editor before it goes on.
mm.
So like that's obviously one thing. And there's all a bunch of other things, obviously, like like we understand what conflict of interest really it's a slippery slope for sure.
Yeah.
It's taken
Yeah.
on a lot of different meanings over time, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of grays and all those things. So yeah, you learn to deal with it with nuance. So those kind of things, yeah, definitely there's a lot more nuance there that is applied and that you try to apply.
Mm.
But yeah, otherwise there are definitely like a lot of set sort of like codes where you know what to follow, and you know when to put your foot down about things.
Yeah.
Like for example, a lot of artists will say that like can you take this article down now? Like because this was from my past, and that's not really me anymore.
Oh.
And I'll say, how does that work? Like it's still an article on our website, and we unless there's something like sort of
Yeah.
defamatory, or if there's something like sort of legally like
Yeah.
problematic in it, I don't see why
Yeah.
we should be taking it down. So yeah, we face all those things. I wouldn't say it's a minefield. it's definitely
Mm.
not that bad compared to, journalism and other sort of like lines of
Like
work, like,
crime
crime
journalism and all.
reporting,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
100%. I think there's a lot of crazy, like sort of things to hang on to there. But in our field, I think it's constantly changing. Once again, like I said, like just as the
Mm.
music industry grows, like I think a lot of like roles and sort of things grow.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you sort of navigate it as you go along, but then at the same time, there are some very like hard and fast rules that everybody agrees to.
Yeah. But in the same light, obviously controversies, and when it comes to musicians and controversies, there are plenty, right? Like it could be for different reasons. So specifically, in the context of separating art from the artist, have you faced a moral dilemma when you've been asked to write about an artist who has probably been involved in a controversy, and especially in the light of Me Too? Obviously, I don't want you to take any names, and I'm just referring back to that particular statement you made about the artist who wanted to remove an article that you'd written about
Hmm.
them in the past, or like actually trying to skip certain questions which might talk about the controversial activities that they've been involved in.
Hmm.
How have you dealt with that, and have you faced those kind of instances in your career?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm happy to take names, by the way, but
No, no,
yes.
no. I'm a lawyer, Anurag. I can't afford to get sued. But yeah, so we
Fair
can
enough.
deep it out, like very like
Okay.
not very creatively, but yeah.
No, no, it's okay. I'll obviously want to keep
You can
keep.
tell me later though.
Nice, off the record.
Yeah,
Nice.
off the record. But
but
go
but
ahead,
no,
yeah.
definitely. There's been a lot of times where like an artist is pitched and
Hmm.
like you're fully aware of what they've been called out for, or what they have been accused of, and all those kind
Hmm.
of things.
Hmm.
And yeah, like my often like my decision is to just err on the side of caution and just say,
Hmm.
I'll check, and then I just say no, basically. Like I say, like I don't want to write about it. I don't
Hmm.
want to write about them. I don't want to write about like the shows that are happening here, or the shows that are happening by this organizer,
Hmm.
or anything like that.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like there's still a lot more things that I still have to know. There's a
Hmm.
lot of things that I don't know. Definitely,
Hmm.
there's a lot of
Hmm.
things that are suspected, gray area, all those
Hmm.
things, right? So
Hmm.
the nuance that comes in there is yeah, definitely discretionary. Like in the
Yeah.
way that like I take a call on it after sort of like knowing as much as I can about things. If people want to speak to me directly, like they do speak to me directly, and I really appreciate that people consider that, like that we are approachable enough to talk about those kind of things.
Hmm.
And yeah, like I mean, we take our best decision. I think, like for me personally, like I usually go to my editor Nirmika, and like I ask her, like like what should we do about this,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, I truly believe that like you need somebody like that, like you need somebody who can take that call for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like so I'm really grateful that I do have a bunch of people like that
Hmm.
for me. um, and other times, yeah, like like if an artist is performing, say, at a festival, for example, and everybody
Hmm.
knows the things that they are accused of, or the things that
Hmm.
they have, yeah, like that they've known to have done.
Yeah.
I think I usually just avoid it entirely, like avoid mentioning them at all. I most times I avoid end up seeing the show itself, their set
Hmm.
itself, and things like that. In the case of organizers, I think it's a lot more difficult, um,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
because I know that organizers work behind the scene, and
Hmm.
sometimes you don't even know when a certain organizer
Exactly.
is part of
Yeah.
a festival. You find out later that, oh, they're part of
Yeah.
this festival,
Yeah.
because they're also probably finding their own way to be a little more I guess,
Discreet, I think.
yeah, incognito about things and
Yeah.
all those kind
Yeah.
of things. So yeah, in those cases, like the more we know, the better, for sure. So
Hmm.
we're constantly trying to update ourselves, and I'm constantly trying to keep track of things. And when somebody says that, like more recently, for example, somebody came to me and told me something about a company,
Hmm.
and yeah, I mean, I take stock of it in the way that, yeah, you have to give me all the, like proof, and you have to give me like all the details. So it's only when I get all those details, and then when I know for sure that, what is being leveled against certain people or certain companies and things like that, like that's when you take an informed decision about what to do next, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, because it's risky, right? And at the end of the day, as a journalist, I think you also have that. It's a professional responsibility to stay neutral, but to what extent can you stay neutral, and to what extent can you actually reflect a certain bias is also, as in it's a judgment call, like you said, and having someone help you take that decision is there. But I think even otherwise, right? Like, even when you're like writing a story, you still need to like navigate a bias, or like it could be something as basic as, an artist that you don't particularly like for personal reasons, right? You
Yeah.
don't relate to their music, or you don't like the genre that they're performing, you just don't like their face for whatever it is, right?
Okay.
How do you stay objective when you're covering something as, personal as art? And
Hmm.
also in the same line, when you're like interviewing an artist, or when you're talking to people, or like interviewing a band, like how do you not sound repetitive? Like, because you do have a lot of that, right? In the kind of profile that you work with, you do a lot of interviews with artists. So how do you make sure that you're not doing the same kind of questions, or like
Hmm.
being repetitive? These are obviously like two separate aspects,
Sure.
two separate questions, so take
Yeah.
your time.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, the first one about, like thinking about like maybe the public perception, or just, like thinking about like maybe how what I personally feel about it. Like, like there's a lot of like, misogyny in like hip hop, for example, in Indian hip hop.
Yeah,
There's a lot of like just mindless like, like name calling, just like
yeah.
abusing and all those
Yeah,
kind of things.
yeah.
And I think that the way I see it is, often I try to think about it as, in fact, public perception. In fact, like I think about it as, so what do people think about this artist? Like,
Mm,
what are these artists' fans like? If they're terrible human beings and they sort of propagate that, then, it sounds like we're better off not covering, giving
mm,
space to those kind of artists.
yeah.
I still remember like an artist that I had just listened to, like that sent me their music. Um, while I enjoyed like some of the production choices and some of the rap and stuff like that, like there was a homophobic slur in there. There was like just some mindless, like, like trying to start some shit, like where they'll,
Mm.
like call out some other rapper and say that this rapper is terrible, like stuff
Oh,
like that. I've
this
heard,
kind of shit. Yeah.
yeah, like I've heard some of that stuff where, it's desperately calling out for attention, it's desperate cry for attention.
Mm. Mm.
um, and I think it's very easy to detect those. At least I hope it's very easy to detect those.
Yeah.
But at the
Yeah.
same time, that artist was quite, like sort of like, I wouldn't say big, like huge, but like that they had quite a following and things like that, and they had
Mm.
a decent
Mm.
following. They had decent listenership. So, all those things like warrant coverage on the one hand, but on the other hand, the content of what they were talking about was, yeah, not really agreeing with me. So those are the kind of
Mm.
like calls that I end up usually taking. A lot of times, I don't know, like there's if I don't like, like certain music, like if I don't like a certain artist,
Mm.
chances are I'm not really covering them at all. Like I'm not giving them any coverage,
Mm.
unless if you're asking about like whether I'm forced to do it. Like, if I'm forced to do it, then
Does that
um,
happen? Are you forced to cover people that you don't like to do,
not
or
not
you
like
don't
in
like to
a,
cover rather?
yeah, like
Sorry.
not in like a major big way, like something like that, like not in like a
Huh. Maybe as a
like,
part of a concert or something like that.
yeah, exactly, like it's not like I'll be
Okay.
asked to do like a cover story on them or something
Mm.
like that.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I'm fine that way.
Mm.
Like I think thankfully, like over the years, like just had that autonomy to decide on my own.
Mm.
um and I think your second question was about
Not being
uh
repetitive with
not
questions.
being repetitive with questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the thing is like when I listen to an artist's music before interviewing them, or just when I look around to, you know, read about what they've been doing and things like that, I try to find perhaps what is unique about them. I try to find perhaps like what is, of course, like they will have their own unique selling point.
Yeah.
as an artist that they like hype up and things like that. But at the same time, I think it's very important for journalists to like see on their own something that they feel that draws them towards an artist or the music.
Mm,
It could be an artist persona itself, or it could be lyrics, or it could be the music itself. So
mm,
I try to find that, and I try to like hone in on that with the interview most of the time. um, and I think like recently, for example, I was speaking to like a Punjabi artist, right? And there's
mm,
obviously, I'm sure they get asked like very like certain typical kind of questions, say about like the global, like allure of Punjabi music, or like the, like how it's global
yeah.
now, or how it'll be like the
Yeah.
next Latin music kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, one of the things early on, I remember like that my editor Lalita had like inculcated like just in how interview questions should be formulated.
Mm.
She often said that like don't ask them something which you can definitely find online. So
Ah,
chances are they have either already answered this question,
answer
or
it.
this
Yeah.
information is like readily available
Readily
online, so you don't
available.
really need to ask them again.
Mm,
It's a
mm,
different
mm.
matter that artists sometimes are very prone to repeating themselves, so they will happily offer this information up again while they're
Yeah.
talking, which
Ah,
is when I
it's
roll my
easy to do that.
eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I roll my eyes a bit and be like, you didn't have to like give me this information.
Okay.
But it's okay, you're doing your thing, you're covering your bases, so that's fine. But yeah, like that's usually the one thing that like I try to still
Mm,
follow, where
okay.
like things are if things are readily available, if things have been asked before, then you don't ask them that again.
Yeah. Yeah. Super. Okay. So I think now I'm sure you have been asked this question many times before, but I want to know, like, how do you discover an artist? Like, do you have like an organized approach to music discovery, or and also do you need an organized approach as a journalist in the music industry, or is it something that has to be organic? Because I feel like today organic is a little controlled to a certain extent. Like, you don't, I mean, radio has like a certain set of music that's constantly playing, and you have like promoted playlists and all of that. So what is how do you discover artists?
Yeah, this is speaking of organized, like it's quite a task to be organized for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I have like 1,500 unread emails in my inbox right now, and I used to be an inbox
Oh
zero
my
person
god. Oh
like
my god. I
before the
feel that
pandemic.
pain. I feel
Yeah,
that number.
yeah, before the pandemic, I was definitely that person. So and in
Hmm.
the mix, like there's definitely been like a lot of artists that have written into me that I have not at all been able to check out, that I've not at all been able to give time to, that I've not even been able to reply to, which I
Hmm.
always want to do.
Hmm.
um Ever since I joined Instagram, obviously even the request DM is like inbox is like has a lot of stuff. So yeah, like for discovery for me, like a lot of the times, in fact, it is like a lot of people writing into me, sending their music and things like that. But more than that, I think the way I have like sort of like built my network is that the people who are on my social media feeds are just people I meet and things like that. Like they're people who tell me about great music, or they're people who share great music when they have it, with them.
Hmm.
So I'm really lucky to be with in the midst of those sort of folks, who will tell me that, hey, this artist is coming out with a new album, or maybe they share the single of like a new artist and things like that. Um, so yeah, I mean, like a lot of times discovery is through those social media feeds and things like that.
Hmm.
A lot of times, I think has been that, yeah, the artist has written to me, so that's definitely still one of the major ways that I find music. Of course, it means that I am not really discovering the music by going out there and discovering it. It's sort of being sent my way.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, at the same time, I believe that like there needs to be something in it for you to really check it out. Um,
Hmm.
as far as like playlists and like streaming playlists and things like that go, I have never actually uh, got into that much at all.
Oh,
Full
okay.
respect to people who discover artists through these playlists. I'm sure they're very key, and they're very much helpful, and they're packed with like a lot of great songs. But for me, like I've never been drawn to those playlists actually to check out,
Mm.
like at least to discover new music, because half the time I look at that playlist and I say I know all these songs. So
Yeah,
it's not a
because
big.
you'd have probably seen them already. It would have been pitched to you anyway.
Exactly. And
So
like you
yeah,
said, like a lot of it is organic in a controlled way, where that,
yeah,
like a lot of it is, it comes in definitely through the distributors or through, the labels and things like that. So,
yeah.
yeah, like I've been trying to like, uh, mostly like have this sort of like a network of people who either share music just on their feeds and then I happen to see it, or
Mm,
they share it directly with me and say that you should check out this artist. So I've been
mm,
really grateful for that. And a lot of times the discovery otherwise comes at I think traditionally pre-pandemic, a lot of that used to come for me through going to shows. Um,
yeah,
and
of course,
it's
yeah.
not so much anymore, I feel,
Mm,
just because
mm,
of the I think the volume of like shows and
yeah,
and thing, and the number kind of artists that get programmed and things like that.
yeah.
But before, like, it was definitely that I would go to, say, like college festivals, or I would go to like club shows at Fandom or like V Flat,
Mm,
Humming Tree, all these places,
yeah.
which had like slightly like upcoming acts, like at playing a support to like a bigger act, for example.
Mm, mm,
And yeah, the sort of like curatorial, year that some of these venues had was definitely very like helpful that way, in
yeah.
turn to promote artists who I think like, yeah, were definitely needed to be discovered.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something which I mean, I really miss in Bangalore, especially like a B flat and a humming tree. Like, the number of gigs we've met you at over there also. I mean, like, I think I've lost count.
Yeah.
So, and not having a good venue, I think it's a huge hit for artists that way. So I just hope that changes over a period of time.
Yeah.
Um, so also tell me, I mean, obviously you would have seen patterns, right, in the industry, like especially with genres. Like I feel like right now lo-fi is very popular on the face of it. I mean, I don't know how happy artists are doing it, but it's just everywhere, right? Have you seen any of these patterns in terms of the kind of genres that you've seen, do really well at one point of time and then not like it kind of like subdued in growth? And has this helped you predict the outcome of an album or an artist, or like whether the artist is going to be successful, or you think the album is going to do really well? And
Hmm.
how has this pattern recognition helped you?
Yeah, it's very interesting because a lot of times as journalists, like we are trying to look for trends, we are trying to look for patterns to, yeah, write about, basically to, like to say
Mm.
that this is happening as, like a movement,
Yeah, yeah.
things like that.
Mm.
So yeah, there's definitely been a lot of things that we've seen over the years. Some of them have been very micro patterns, which, come and go. Some of them are
Mm.
things that we predict that obviously didn't come true. There are things that
Mm.
we predict which definitely came true. So
Yeah,
all
yeah.
those things have come and gone along the way. Like, I mean, specifically, like I think when like nuclear blew up with like desi bass music and like
Yeah,
that Indianized electronic sound.
yeah.
I think it was plain to see that it was going to stick around, and there were going to be a
Mm.
lot of people who were going to do follow in his footsteps and do like what he was doing, or do something similar.
Yeah.
So that was definitely there. I think one of the things that we saw over time was that progressive rock and like progressive metal and things like that have always like had an audience in India. Like that's what we've seen over time,
Mm.
and
Mm.
I think like we're seeing it in different forms that way. Like like we still see, for example, this past weekend, like there was a pair called Luke Holland and Jason Richardson who came to India to tour,
Okay.
and that was like one of them is a YouTuber and one of them used to play in a jet band. So
Oh, yeah.
like they teamed up together, they had an album together. So the fact that they were coming to India itself proves that I still remember I went to that show, and I think the guitarist asked like how many people play guitar, and like literally 90% of the venue put their hands up. So
Oh, wow.
like I think
Sanjeev is not going to be happy with this.
like, it's exactly what I was thinking of back then when I was trying to understand why like prog music is like has
Mm.
such an audience. It's because
Mm.
a lot of younger people, or just people in general, when they're learning their instruments and stuff, I think they're drawn to this sort of like technical, virtuosic kind of music.
Yeah.
So like even if like Ingve Malmsteen like comes down to Arunachal, like people will want to go and see him there, no matter how crazy the journey is.
Wow. Yeah.
So
I
I
just had
think
a visual of that in my head. That'll be pretty like epic.
yeah, yeah, I mean, it was pretty epic for sure.
Mm.
It was one of those things that you don't really imagine happening in India, but then at the same time, you think back to it and you be like, of course, it can happen in India because there's
Mm.
always been an audience that wants to see these
Mm.
sort of artists like Steve Vai, Joe Satriani. All
Yeah.
these guys have come
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
multiple times now.
Yeah.
So I think seeing that trend was also something. Seeing more like electronic bedroom producers who I think like made their ways into clubs, and then some
Mm.
of them who made their way into more like studio work for commercial things like
Mm.
films and OTT stuff. Like seeing all
Mm.
that has also been quite interesting.
Mm.
I don't think I would have guessed, like some of the home like bedroom producers that I used to listen to have now like doing some music for like some big show with like some big art actors and stuff like that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's been really cool to see that too. There's definitely a lot of like for example, I remember more distinctly, like I'm just thinking of all the trend stories that were covered over the years. For
Yeah.
example, like one of my colleagues did a story about like how radio, for example, was like one of the things that I've written about at least like a few times, and I think everybody has, was how
Mm.
like radio in India doesn't cover like indie music like so
Oh my
much,
God. Yeah. This is,
right?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Or like like now there's online radio which serves the needs of those kind of like
Yeah.
audiences, and
Yeah.
all those conversations that go on, and like those are, I think, topics that are slightly evergreen in the sense of like you can still talk about them and you can
Mm.
still get like maybe hopefully different answers and things like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been quite fun to like constantly engage with those sort of trends and see like what's happening like now with obviously with the like uh, with Spotify coming into India and more streaming sort of like
Yeah.
push happening for artists. Yeah, you begin to see a lot of things happening on those fronts in terms of
Mm.
trends and stuff like that. So those are also things that I guess like you have a lot more data to work with, I guess. Although it
Yeah.
depends on who is forthcoming with that data. But yeah, you try to think about it a little bit at least as data and try to do. Like one of the places that I started writing for over the last couple of years was
Mm.
Music Plus. So that was more like
Ah. Yeah.
like B2B kind of stuff, like more industry kind of stuff, where they
Mm.
wanted me to write about NFTs and like the crypto world and like these centralized kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that was also a trend, obviously, right? Like in music that has come and sort of
Yeah.
like is on the way out, I feel. um,
Yeah, I actually, yeah, I'm very divided about that. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. But let's go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, like writing about those kind of things that were
Yeah.
happening in the world, writing about how like, I think now like more recently writing about how like music and gaming are like intersecting, for
Mm.
example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, these are topics that I think have like a perennial sort of like interest. So yeah, hopefully, continuing to engage with them, and, like the Indian music industry itself gives us a lot to engage with that way.
Yeah, for sure. I think given I mean, because I genuinely feel that the industry has so much going for it because there's no dearth of talent. It's just that obviously with how the film industry has been historically and how things have changed in the last like 5 6 years, obviously, and I think like you said, the whole like independent artists working with OTT platforms and becoming full-time composers, that I'd like to think it's not a trend. It's like a actual shift in the industry to recognizing that talent exists outside that little pool which is
Hmm.
available to the film industry. So that's great. I mean, but
Yeah.
tell me, and now I want to like do like a little pop quiz based on what you've told me. What is a trend that you've not liked or you've like been irritated with and you just wanted it to go?
Damn. I'm
Right?
actually gonna.
Is it a damn because there are so many, or is it a damn because you can't think of any?
I mean, yeah, I think it's a damn because there are too many, basically. Like, but thankfully, some of them have faded away with their own sort of like
Huh. Okay.
time. So
Hmm.
like that's what I like to think happens, and hopefully that will continue to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like one trend that was like almost I felt like it went on either too long or like it just proliferated at a level that I didn't expect was actually like these kind of like lo-fi remakes and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, like I understood why they were doing what they were doing,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I didn't fully understand why it's still a thing that somebody would want to listen to like a reverb plus slow
Yeah.
version of some song and things like that.
And why are
Uh,
labels okay with it? Like, I'm really like,
well,
you
labels
know,
are probably okay with it because they just make more money out of it.
possible. Yeah.
But I think that was definitely one thing. The other thing was I think I'm definitely as a larger trend, like just knowing like what reels do for music
Yeah.
has been it's been quite like
The
weird
one
to
minute
see.
music thing, no? Yeah.
Yeah, that also, and also just like I mean maybe I don't fully understand, but a lot of times like I'll see like a reel where the artist's music is used, but
Huh.
they aren't like the Instagram
Credited.
part that has the music library part, like which
Ah.
says like it just says original audio by this user or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah. Actually, I've seen that. Yeah.
I think I have a lot of sort of like pet peeves with like just the creator, like content creator economy and like what they've been, how they've been interacting with music. Like I feel
Mm.
like a lot of it is very unnecessarily like, like did you know this kind of stuff, and then the fact will be something that everybody always knew. So then you'll just be like, of course we knew this. Um, like
Uh,
people saying that did you know that Led Zeppelin came to India? Like whole world knows now as Led Zeppelin came to India. Like you don't like how many more photos do you want? How many more of the same 5 photos do you want from the
yeah.
thing to talk about
Yeah.
it? Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, like I think like especially with like those kind of like content creator sort of like explosion that happens, and their like just the need to be so prolific about things,
Mm.
like
Mm.
because I think their work demands them to be so prolific and like to constantly put out stuff every week,
Yeah.
every day, whatever it is, that
Yeah.
I think that they definitely let go of like a lot of things. Like they definitely are very surface level instead of understanding something deeper. So I
Yeah.
hope that, yeah, I mean, not to say that there aren't content creators who don't go in deep, who don't give us like genuine insights, who I think they're 100% like content creators who are more insightful than journalists themselves and things like that. So there's no doubt those also exist, but at the same time, a lot of them are
Mm.
just, like beating a dead horse, basically.
Yeah. Because I mean, like what you mentioned about like, especially in terms of like when I see artists struggling with like understanding the algorithm and putting out a post saying that, I put out this post because Instagram expects me to put a reel out and it's not a reel, it's a picture. And I just want you to stay engaged and keep following my work. And there are people who have zero talent but are like doing things just to like get attention and have like a million followers. And then you
Exactly.
have like musicians who are like creating such amazing pieces of work and like struggling to get the followers that they need. And that really irritates me about the industry because I think let's just put all of that on capitalism. And,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's
you know,
exactly what you said. Like, there's some people who are doing something completely just for attention, and there's some
yeah,
people who are doing it genuinely for engagement. So,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, I think. But anyway, you have a pop quiz, right? Like, so what else did you want to
yeah.
ask?
So the other thing which I wanted to ask you was like, I think you kind of already answered it, but in the larger context of the music industry itself, right? What are the two things which you have felt have been like you would say like two pet peeves, but things which are really exploitative things in the industry which you don't like and which you would wish for it to go away?
Or to go away only? Oh
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
uh,
They should be banished and like banned from existence type. It could be
yeah.
people also, no problem.
I think one of them is definitely like the sort of expectations between venues and artists. Like either it's a unsaid expectation, or it's like a gray area, or it's just something that isn't properly communicated. But one of the things that we definitely need to get rid of is just like asking the question of who brings the audience to a show. For example, like venue will say that the artist should bring an audience to a show. An artist will say that the venue should bring an audience to the show.
Huh.
The brand will say that both of you should bring the audience to the show, even though we have the money. So like you think about all those things, and you just say like it seems like it's something that can just be talked out and clarified once and for all.
Yeah.
Like we can
Yeah.
arrive at like a standard for this, like where
Yeah.
we can say that again, I don't know what the answer is myself. So because
Yeah.
I'm not an artist, I'm not a venue. So the people who have the answers are obviously the artists and the venues. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope that that's one of the things that, like, I think
Yeah,
that's a
goes
pretty
away.
easy thing to arrive at, pretty
Mm.
easy thing to resolve if everybody just gets together and talks about it.
Mm.
The other pet peeve, which I think comes to mind only because some recent incidents happened, was that I think like how college festivals function.
Non-payment.
Yeah, and non-payment of dues, or offering asking people to play for free and things like
Yeah.
that.
Oh
um,
God.
it's definitely not new, so that's why even more so it's something that just needs to
Yeah.
be done
It should
away
just
with.
go. Yeah.
um like
Yeah.
I think at the core of it, like I was trying to understand it, and I think at the core of it is that a lot of college students aren't really in this for like anything in terms of long run. Some of them are, and that's great, but some of them definitely aren't. It's just like a take on their resume, or just something that they can get a certificate for, and say that oh, we had such great days in college doing this and that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they are speaking to professional artists, they are speaking to professional music music professionals, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. To
I
people
think
who
like,
actually survive with the money that they get paid out from all of these gigs. So it's
yeah,
just,
exactly. So I think like the level of professionalism it needs to sort of like, I mean, not level of professionalism that they need to like have some kind of like, like they need to like really do something that makes them look like an organization or anything, because that's too much to expect in the
yeah.
chaos of a college student's life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe there just needs to be like a standard set of rules, that like a standard protocol that needs to be followed, handed down from batch to batch, maybe from senior to junior, that needs to be adhered to, so that like everybody just has like a clear understanding of the do's and don'ts about,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
just what to expect from organizing a college festival or organizing a show like that. So I think like college festivals definitely need to clean up their act, and I
Yeah,
hope
for
that
sure.
they that there's something in place that sort of like gives them that guidance.
And I think also that whole thing about, I think this stems from people not taking, I think, entertainment as a, in quotes, serious profession, right? Like people are like, oh, you sing, you play music, like what's so serious about it? Like how does it matter if I don't pay you type? That attitude that they have to, like, would you ever do that to like a doctor or like an engineer? Like, would you say that come do this for exposure? So
Yeah.
you wouldn't, right? Like I think that whole dignity of labor, in the sense that dignity of any profession, like anything, if you're
Exactly.
calling yourself a professional musician, it's because you rely on this art form to pay your bills, which means you pay
Exactly.
me, and exposure is not going to pay my bills. So
I
yeah.
think, yeah, I think like some things were like sort of like that irreversible sort of things, like like streaming and all those things, for example, which like when you start, like when free started getting associated with music, like I think
Yeah,
that's when a lot of things became sadly
problematic. Yeah,
irreversible and
yeah,
problematic. So, but like at the same time, like I think there's ways that you can be
yeah,
sensitized to it, and just sort of like, yeah, just pay people.
yeah. And I think that's like my pet peeve with the world at large. Like, pay for music, damn it. Like, it's not that hard. If you can pay like $3,000 to like have two beers and have a meal at a place and listen to music over there, you are actually also paying for music. So just pay for music. Like, allow your artist to get paid properly. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Like I think like that it's definitely a cultural, psychological, sociological, all those kind of things where people haven't been sort of like fully in the know about things like that. So how do we do it? I mean, we don't know. Like, do we? I mean, does there have to be like a movie, Bollywood movie about it or something like that? Maybe then like something that actually like realistically tells like stories, not like some
Yeah,
other movies which don't really portray like artists as like just beaten up
like
drug
rock
addicts or
on.
something. Yeah. Like maybe there needs to be like a real, like like now Zagato came out, for example. So a lot of people are
Yeah,
talking about that film as how it sensitizes people to the lives of delivery personnel and things like that. So
yeah. Okay, I want to watch it actually. Yeah,
yeah, like I assume that maybe the music industry or maybe all industries need something like this so that people are
yeah,
a little bit, at least if not everybody, at least like a good amount of people get a little more sensitive about it.
yeah. That's true. Because I think we have enough of those from Hollywood. Like, but I think we need like an Indian movie to be made on the lives of musicians and not like showing, like you said, like just because that like giving weed a bad name is showing that weed destroys lives, and I'm just like, dude, the worst thing that will happen is they'll just eat through your meals for the next 3 days in one sitting. But anyway, okay, my last question for the pop quiz is that what has been one story that you're exceptionally proud of? Like, has it been any interview or some coverage or like a industry insight that you've contributed to, which you were really excited about and that really meant something to you? In the sense, I'm sure everything has, but I would assume that some of them stick out a lot more than the other, right?
Oh
So
yeah,
give me one of those, one of your favorites.
definitely. Like there's been tons of those. I wouldn't be here if there weren't tons of those. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I'm quite like proud of. I guess like one of the stories I got to do for Billboard, for example,
Mm.
was about Baby Metal, the Japanese band, and they were such an enigma in the way that how they were constructed, or just like how the members were and the kind of songs they were doing and the kind of recognition they were getting all over the world.
Mm.
And I think, yeah, one of the things that I got to do was just to speak to one of their members, who more of the behind the scenes members, and write about that for
Mm.
Billboard. So I mean, the publication mattered for me, and then also the story. I guess another quick one that I would mention was definitely writing about Bloodywood for Revolver,
Mm.
because I, in fact, met them in Delhi and did that interview with them. I happened to be in Delhi, so I went to interview them at like some restaurant somewhere,
Mm.
and it was really exceptional to not just speak to them, but to also do a premiere of their music video for what is easily like one of their most, I think, fan favorite songs called G Veere, and
Oh, yeah.
it was something that they did with an eye on like helping like giving out like counseling codes for like online
Mm.
counseling and things like that. So to I guess,
Wow.
yeah, to I guess talk about the band and their mission,
Mm.
to talk about a song that was really powerful, and to do it for an international publication like Revolver, like that was all very special for me.
Nice. That's nice. That's very heartwarming. But okay, so and the last one is, what would your advice be to a young upcoming indie artist in India today? Such a cliched question, but I want to know.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be fair, even I end with cliched questions like what is coming up in 2023 and all that. Like, those are kind of things, but I think those are kind of things that artists are anyway excited to talk about. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I would say that, like, indie artists should just keep making music, and should sort of like keep an eye out, keep a ear to the ground about like what's happening around them. Like, unfortunately, the way things are right now, like, the music industry is, you cannot exist in a vacuum making music, like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're completely okay to do that, then you also have to be okay with the fact that you will probably have very few listeners and nobody who will really
Mm.
engage with your art. So I would say that, like keeping a ear to the ground is very, very important. Whether to
Mm.
act on it or not is wholly, your decision, whether you want to say make a reel, or whether you want to be on a lineup with a certain artist, or whether you want to play for free at a festival, like all those things. Like the decision is yours at the end. But
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
keeping a ear to the ground, and like making music that you truly believe in, like I think that's like uh, I think that's the greatest thing, like a lot of artists can do. Like if they just have music that really speaks, either
Mm.
lyrically, or like even
Has a
with
story to tell.
yeah, with
Yeah.
composition, all those kind of things. Like I think that in itself goes a long way, because I think I mean, I'm just saying something that artists have said to me, which is that, like when they know that they have listeners who truly, like, even if it's just a few listeners, as long as they have listeners who truly get what they're doing, like I think
Mm.
that's pretty much fuel for them to go like a long way,
Yeah,
at their
yeah.
own pace. Again, like I think that's also something worth mentioning, that like I've seen a lot of artists go at their own pace over time, and sometimes
Mm.
it's frustrating to see as a journalist, because you'll be like, hey, you're so good, like where is the next freaking song, man? But
Yeah,
like
yeah,
but at the same time, like yeah, like it's also something that I think everybody understands, that like
yeah,
everybody needs
yeah.
to go at their own pace, especially
Right.
creatively and
Yeah.
stuff. So I would say that, yeah, like artists should definitely also go at their own pace, like don't be bogged down by like the volume of stuff that comes out today,
Mm.
or that say that some hip hop artist comes out with an album every year, and it's like the best album that ever is that year, or something like that. That doesn't mean that you need to be that person. um,
Yeah.
I think
It's
like
hard to not compare though. I mean,
yeah,
given the
it's
kind of
true.
atmosphere we're in, like
Absolutely,
with an Instagram. But
absolutely,
yeah,
I
but which
agree.
is why it's very, very relevant advice,
Yeah,
especially
absolutely, I
since you're
agree.
a
I,
journalist.
yeah, I mean, and I think we all do it, like in a way that like that we all look at everybody, what they're doing around us, and we feel like, am I doing enough, or some things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
I think as anybody in any creative field, that's quite a pressing concern for
yeah,
these days.
yeah.
But I would say, yeah, like there's nothing wrong with taking your own time.
Great. I think that's something which I want. Like I want everyone to like listen to and repeat that. Take your own time, because I think especially art is something that can't be forced. And I mean, sure, by all means, make your 1 minute reels if you feel the need to, but don't succumb to that stupid algorithm. But
Yeah, I mean, like take your own time, and we'll all be here. Like when
yeah,
when it
I
comes
know.
out, like we'll all be
Yeah.
behind you. Whether it took 10 years
Oh.
to make or 5 years to make, like I remember like artists like write to me sometimes and say like, "Do you remember me? I hope you remember me." We're like, "Yeah, of course I remember you." I mean, one, because I can see the previous WhatsApp chats, so I can always remember you. But the other hand,
Yeah.
yes, like I remember you because you put out some great music. So I'm always looking
Yeah.
forward to, like, even when I
Yeah.
tell artists like looking forward to your next stuff, like I'm fully aware that I'm building that pressure on them to say that when is your next stuff, but at the same time I make sure to add that, whenever it comes out. So like whenever
Yeah.
it comes out, like, yeah, I'm looking forward to
I
it.
know. Well, that's such a nice thing to say, Anurag. Like, I
Thank
mean,
you.
I'm sure every artist listening to this will appreciate it. So I want to wrap up our session today with my last question.
Okay.
Okay, um, which is again slightly cliched, but it's also very specific to you, to your profession, and to your journey as a music journalist. How do you become a competent music journalist, and like how do you stay relevant? More importantly, because I think being a competent music journalist is a little subjective, but how do you stay relevant as a music journalist today? Because today anyone can actually talk about music, right? Because I have access to the internet. I have access to a platform that allows me to write, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, or I can just create a blog. um, how do you stay relevant as a music journalist who's like carved out a niche as a in this industry, as a journalist specifically? And what would be your advice to anyone who's aspiring to become one?
Yeah, I would say that the one of the key things that we sort of have known about music journalism that works, and I think one of the key things that is central to journalism in general is context. And I would say
Mm,
that
mm,
like one of the ways that I think music journalists can I think stay relevant, or just stay consistent in the writing, and just in building sort of like their own following, or maybe building their own voices, to always keep context as a very important part of what when they're writing, because I feel like at least in my writing, like whenever I write about an artist, like I feel that like even when I'm reviewing a record or anything like that, like I feel like providing context to either the artist, or say even an instrument they've used, or even anything like that, like building upon context is, I think, like super super important. So that's one thing that's more of like a technique, I guess.
Mm,
But
mm,
in the other way, to sort of be like a consistent, and like like to stay relevant,
mm.
I would say that yeah, just believe in the music that you're writing about. I would say, like like,
Yeah,
because a lot of times, whether we like it or not, our audience is our musicians. Like the people
yeah,
reading about
exactly.
music is another musician.
Yeah,
Like they'll say that I read about what you wrote for that artist, so like, why don't you write about me, and things like that. So that can't be helped. Like that's just where we are right now, as
yeah,
in terms of readership. Like a lot of people will be musicians themselves. So, but
correct.
so in that, to that end, I would say that being relevant is about writing about music in a way that can be understood, like to the
Mm,
reader, and then at the same
mm.
time can also offer like some sort of insight as to what the musician like wants to say through their music,
Yeah.
like understanding what they want to convey through the music. So like if some prog artist has like some super long concept that's like 12 layers deep about their album, your
Uh,
job is to
Simplify it. Yeah.
concisely simplify it, and
Yeah.
maybe write about it in a way that anybody can understand. So
Yeah.
once you do that, like not only will it obviously feel like a huge relief, but it will
Yeah.
also feel like yeah, that that I think once people read it, they'll feel like, okay, like this person gets it.
Yeah. And then, yeah, that's true actually, because I was just thinking about like the times when obviously like pre Spotify and all of that, right? Like when you're actually looking for, I don't know, like some kind of information about an artist which you wouldn't have got anywhere else. Like, and it's like you want to know, like, there's someone who's playing a concert and everybody's really excited about it. And you're looking for information on what the music is about. And you probably find it best written by a music journalist who has like summed up the genre or the kind of music that they have performed previously or the kind of albums they've released previously. And they've described it really well there. So, and it has to be in language that someone who doesn't know music understands, because that's also your audience, right? You have your musicians and you have your non-musicians like me. Like, I wouldn't like if you obviously like give
Yeah.
me like technicalities, I'll just be like, huh, what? So, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think that helps in my case, because like even I'm not like, I mean, I can claim that I play an instrument and things like that, but I would never be
yeah,
obsessed with like the technicalities of how it
yeah,
goes.
yeah, yeah. Like if someone said that, oh, I don't even know how to give an example of a technicality because I know
Polyrhythms, pentatonics, and other
yeah, yeah. Oh no, no.
keywords.
It'll all fly over my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, but thank you so much, Anurag. It's I think talking to you has always been such a breeze. Like I love our interactions, and I've always like you know I think we've constantly like bumped into each other at like all these concerts, and I'm just glad that we finally got to do this episode together. And I really think you have like there's so much, especially in the kind of field that you're in. You're constantly like coming across more information, more like I think insights into like the way the industry works. You should also like do like a podcast, like like what Amit is doing.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I
yeah,
mean, I do think about it, and I do like a lot of people come up to me and tell me this. So
yeah,
I guess it's mostly a question of maintenance and sustenance and all those kind of things. So like
but
yeah, that's true. No, but I know it's also like it definitely feels like a very rewarding thing. Like like I feel like what you do, and like what Amit does, and like a lot of other
yeah,
podcast creators and things like that. Like
yeah.
like I feel like it's quite a nice way to like put your thoughts out
Channel
there.
all, yeah, put
Yeah.
my thoughts out there. And for me, I think uh like obviously like I make zero money out of this podcast. Like to whoever's listening to this podcast right now, if you want to invest in me, I'm available for investment. But this is more like a I enjoy the conversations that I have with different people that I've met in the industry, and I think there's so much to learn, because the kind of stuff that we've spoken about today, or the conversations that I've had in the past, it's not material that you will find. If I Google it, I'm not going to find it, because
Yeah.
all of this, rests in your experiences, and I think this is the best way that I can actually get all of that and put it in one place for posterity. So you never know, 10 years from
I agree.
today, they're going to be referring back to this conversation, saying that, Anurag had said this in stop music at that particular episode.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
Sunday I'd ask this and stuff. So 100%.
so yeah. But once again, thank you so much, and I really appreciate you taking time out.
Yeah, thank you, Sandhya.
And
Yeah, it's always a pleasure talking to you, and see you at the next gig, of course.
yes, for sure. And thank you everyone who tuned in. I really hope you enjoyed this time's episode, and see you in the next one.